Hello.
Hi, Adam. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Aki. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah,
We are
welcome.
back.
I know, and I'm so excited to be starting the year chatting to you. I can see people joining us. So welcome everyone. Do type in and let us know. Sorry, that's my other device making a sound. Yeah, do type in and let us know if you are here, or if you're a long time yoga practitioner, or you're absolutely brand new to yoga and are figuring out how on earth you do it at home. So just before we kind of really get going, Adam, I was just curious to know about your journey with home practice. Have you always practiced a bit at home, or were you always, when you first started, did you always go to classes, and how was that little transition?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved being in a classroom filled with people, sort of being told what to do. So that was always, fantastic for me. And I like the community of that. But practice started to shift for me when I realized that I'm getting weird echo, so I'm gonna take it off. So I'll put it on later. Practice sort of shifted for me when I realized that I needed to do it in a way that it would serve my needs, and to sort of make sure what I was doing was actually helping me feel good and meet the mood I was in, and what I wanted yoga to do for me. So I knew that if I was just going to wander into anyone's class, I wasn't necessarily going to get that. I think you can, but you have to be a little bit creative. So I knew that I got to do this at home, or I got to do it, maybe I do it with a video, maybe I do it with something, but I have to take an active role in choosing what I'm going to do. So that means home practice. But that's hard. It's hard to get the motivation to do it at home. So I'm also a realist to sort of, I acknowledge that ain't easy to do a home practice. And it's like a different journey, but I think it's ultimately a more rewarding journey when you take the time to say, I want to do this for myself. I'm going to choose exactly what I want it to be for me. And it's fantastic. So I think we really want to use this time to support all of you, especially I think probably people are starting afresh, or saying I'm going to do it now. I've made a resolution. I'm going to do it a little bit more now. And sort of talk through well, how do you make that work when every lazy bone in your body says, I don't want to do that.
And it can be that it's a moment of recommitting to it as well, because it might have been something that you did do a lot of, and then you've kind of lost the habit, and it feels a bit weird. And I know when I first came to home, it was so I sound like a dinosaur now. I was going to say it was in the days before, that it was sort of practically there was definitely no internet yoga, and I had to go to a class, and I lived a long way away, and it just didn't happen. But yoga made me feel good, and the only way I could do yoga, apart from making this really long journey, and it wasn't always convenient, was so this was before the proliferation of a studio on every street corner in London, and so the only way was by doing it at home. And I had absolutely no idea really of what I was doing, but I kind of figured it out, and I did it, and I used to do it quite in quite a committed way, and then I fell off the wagon, which kind of happens a lot, doesn't it? And then and even to the point when I was training to teach, I had a very up and down home practice, but I really tried to use all the tools I had. So having something like Movement for Modern Life was something I found really useful. But I mean, even, you know, and I probably practice in a more kind of sustained and way now than and consistent way now than I ever have. But even, or maybe especially, yoga teachers do fall off the wagon all the time. It's hard, isn't it? It's not easy. Do you leap out of bed in the morning,
No.
spring in your step, going, "Yay! I can leap onto my mat"? And
it's a discipline. But I sort of want to say like two things. I want to talk about this in the context of New Year, because I think a lot of us are feeling it in that way. Is that, I mean, you mentioned several times about falling off the wagon. I think we have to sort of expect that we fall off the wagon. Okay, we expect that there's going to be a struggle and there's going to be a little bit of failure. And especially, like, you have to realize that most resolutions, if you're thinking like, I'm using my willpower to decide I'm going to practice yoga or whatever it is, like 90% of resolutions fail. 90% of resolutions like fail by mid-January because like it's exhausting to use willpower from brain to say like, I'm going to do this, if that's the thing that's sort of fueling you. So we got to sort of like dig deeper to find why we might want to practice, and that's like a continual, every day, every month, every week, every year, every season, every life event practice to sort of summon, why on earth am I doing this thing, which is hard and makes me confront, you know, the limits of my body and the limits of my emotions and my interaction with the world, when it would feel easier just to lie down.
Right? And in fact, I think, Adam, that's one of the most profound questions that you regularly ask. Why do you practice?
Yeah.
And it does make, because why are we saying to ourselves, you should, beating ourselves up and tying ourselves up like a pretzel? And it's because it makes us feel good, right? But there may be other reasons that we practice as well, and it could change.
I sort of think that like your discipline and your practice comes from an outcome of you being really like well connected to why you need this. Because if you sort of really take the time to connect to, let's say, your need for self-care, or your need for self-compassion, or your need for patience, or your need for just, you know, getting your joints moving and really understanding why you might want to move freely, then like the summoning the energy to get up at, you know, 30 minutes earlier and do something will be a lot easier than you just saying, like, I should be doing that because that's what I decided this year. But like in the context of this, the other thing I want to say is I think we're like in a golden age of it being easy to do self-practice because we have so many resources available based on like what your specific needs are and what's going to motivate you. You know, because it's not just like, I gotta figure something out to do with my body. It's like, I got books, I got podcasts, I got streaming yoga sites that are arranged with a variety of different type of practices. So you can sort of figure out like, all right, if I take the time and connect to what I need to feel good in my body and feel good in my heart and, you know, move in the way I want to, then it's easy to say, all right, I know that I need to just like energize, and like, I know I'm feeling a little like tight and clunky in this part of my body, and I got 20 minutes before I need to go get the kids. You can look and do a 15-20 minute practice that does all those things. And it's relatively easy to organize yourself to find that content now. So I think it's like, if you do the work to figure out why you're practicing, it's pretty easy these days to self-practice.
And you said a couple of things that I want to pick up on. So one of them was the amount of time, and And I think this is a really big one for me, because I went around for years not doing practices that were 60 minutes at home, and then beating myself up because somehow in my brain was this thing that said a yoga practice is a certain length. And so I'm going to ask you the question, how long is a yoga practice?
It it depends. All right. So I think, well, a yoga practice is every day, every moment, a lifetime. But it depends on if, like, you mean by yoga practice, I want to do the splits, then you will probably need 60 to 90 minutes, like, consistently, to get the body warmed up enough and like organized and like sort of lead yourself into that. If you're doing a yoga practice to just sort of like throughout the day feel good and mobilized and to regulate your breath and your nervous system, then you can do 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, 20 minutes there. When you feel like it and you have time, you can do an hour. I think we sort of have to not assume that a good yoga practice or like a real yoga practice means you do 60, 75 minutes. That is great. That is great to do that, and it's fun, and you can physically go, a little deeper because you warm up, and you also, it's like more demanding on your attention span, and you can, sort of dig a little bit deeper into your psyche. But that doesn't mean that's the only way. And I think there's something really powerful in throughout the day, especially like morning, let's say, for example, you wake up, you take a moment to like breathe and say, all right, I've woken up, my shoulders are tight, I'm feeling a little bit anxious about what's to come. Let me do, before breakfast or, mid-morning, a little bit of practice to deal with the shoulders, to deal with my anxiety, and then carry on the rest of my day. Maybe mid-afternoon, you're working on something, and you feel like, oh my, I'm really sleepy. All right, I'm really sleepy. Do I just need to rest, or do I need to pick myself up? Then you choose that practice and you do that for 15 minutes. And then, nighttime, you're like all jacked up because you've been doing all this stuff all day and you want to go to bed on time. Maybe that's the time that you do something that winds you down, or you, in any orientation. I think 60 minutes spread throughout in little small practices is, a wonderful thing, as much as 60 minutes all at once. And like every day doesn't have to be the same thing. But I think if we loosen up the like what we think a yoga practice has to be or how long it has to be, then we're more likely to like do it.
And so I'm doing a dreadful thing now. I'm going to ask you two questions. But well, the other thing I wanted to come back to from your original statement was also the word should, because I think quite often we feel we should, and we say to ourselves, oh, I should do yoga, but blah, 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 or whatever. So how do we deal with that feeling of should, and when is should counterproductive and when is it helpful?
I think you have to ask yourself, and like you have to listen carefully and sort of determine who is telling me I should do that. Who is that? Who is that voice in my head telling me I should do that? And what's their agenda? What do they want out of this? Because the should voice might be like the best friend you got saying a little bit of discipline is going to do you good. It's going to help you, be like feel well. It's going to help you be calm. It's help you be present for your life. And it might be, feel inconvenient in the moment to stop what you wanted to do and do this other thing, do this practice. But that friendly voice has the right intentions to take care of you. But there also might be a should voice that says, you should be doing this because you should lose weight. You should be doing this because you always fail at everything. It might be like that like high school gym teacher who has it in for you, telling you
had the same one.
Yeah,
obviously.
it's still haunting you.
Yeah.
It might be the whatever, like dysfunctional relationship with a parent or whomever, like that this tells you you should be doing this because that's, you know, that's what I think you should be doing it, because that's what makes a good person and a person who stays committed. And like, you have to ask, does that person have my care in mind? Or are they trying to like sabotage me by making me feel guilty? So I think you have to really ask, who is that person telling me I should do this? And maybe you shouldn't listen to some of them, okay? And you should start seeking out the voices of support from yourself, from within, and also, you know, with family and partners and whatnot. But I think that's why it's so important to connect to like the deep emotional core of why you want to practice. Because I mean, intentions are powerful things, but just willpower intentions, fatigue you. There's like I should do this because it's the right thing, fatigue you. But emotional, like things that come from deeper within you, do not fatigue you in the same way of keeping that discipline up. So I think it's so important to connect to the friendly voices that give you a little bit of boost. And you may have to dig deep. You may have to like find that spiritual or that philosophical book that inspires you, or that reason in your life that, you know, gives you a bit of a boost. Maybe it's a song, maybe it's some sort of ritual you do that gets you in the right space, but you have to sort of find that richer push.
And in fact, I was just thinking that I think you've almost answered this already, but I was going to ask you about how to figure out what it is you need. I think sometimes it's really obvious and sometimes it isn't. So how do you figure it out? And once you have sort of got to the point where you think, I do want to do yoga, but I'm feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, I don't know what sort of class I need to do. And there is still that underlying kind of, I suppose, sluggishness. Maybe you talked about ritual there, which I was just reading in the movers group earlier. Someone had said they lit a candle, and they don't normally do that, but it really helped them. So yeah, how do you figure out how to make that experience feel supportive, but also what it is you need? Because sometimes you can feel tired but actually need a really active practice, and sometimes you can feel tired and need to have a restorative practice. How do you know?
So I think first you have to sort of like dedicate like the time, and maybe you shift the space. You light the candle, you change the lights. Like you sort of say like, all right, I'm doing something, I'm stepping outside of my routine, and I'm going to stop for a second. And like, to make this really practical for people, like this is what you should be doing, I think, like when you sign onto the site, onto our site, and sort of are determining what class you want to do, if you haven't already decided. All right, you sort of stop for a moment, you come into something that feels quieter and slower, and I think it just starts with the question like, how am I feeling? And we often, you know, we get asked that all the time, like, how you doing, and we lie and we say, great, fine. But it's not, it's just us being polite. If you ask yourself, all right, how am I feeling? And then you can drill that down. You can say, all right, well, how's my body doing? And you can be like, all right, well, how's my neck? How are my shoulders? How are my hips? How are my feet? How's my belly? How's my breath? And sort of go through that. Then you can sort of determine, if you go through that physical process, then you can sort of think, all right, well, maybe I'll do a class that addresses one of those things. All right, so you sort of have a region in mind. Then you can start thinking, all right, well, how's my energy level? How is my energy level? Am I tired? Am I not tired? Am I somewhere in between? And then it can be hard to really know if you say you feel tired, if you need a class that's restful, or if you need a class that's going to boost you up. Sometimes it's you're just gonna have to experiment and see what works best for you. Like you can just sort of go through this check-in process afterwards, but you could also think, all right, I'm tired. What do I have to do after this? What's the rest of my day look like? What time of day is it? If I'm tired and it's 10 o'clock at night, maybe I just do something that helps me transition into rest and and sleep. If I'm tired and it's 2 in the afternoon and I got to go do a bunch of stuff after, then maybe you'll want something that invigorates you a little bit. But you just have to play around with it. So then you can start thinking, all right, with my energy level, what level class do I want? What intensity class do I want? And also, no matter what the teacher's teaching, how much push am I going to put into it to serve those needs? So I think, it's not just the teacher tells you to do something and you do it. You also add to it your own amount of like push and pull and intensity, and you got to determine that on your own. So that's what I think makes it self-practice rather than you just replicating something you see on your screen, is how much you put into it. And then the final layer for me is, all right, well, where are my thoughts? Are they like going really fast? Are they going really slow? Are they thinking about something that hasn't happened and maybe the future? Are they thinking about the past and ruminating over, something I said 20 years ago that I'm upset about? So then you can get, sort of, you get like a little taste, like, all right, maybe I'm a little bit anxious, maybe I'm a little bit down, and I can choose a class that will help me sort of manage that or transform that. And, I've created classes like that for me do like the uplift or the ground. But I know you do some of this stuff too. And we should say, like, your classes are on the site now, which is so exciting. Just want to pull that. But you see, you can choose what teachers have said will do like the uplift or the ground. But then it's still experimentation because everyone sort of responds a little bit differently. So you might find the classes or the type of class that help you meet your nervous system where it is. And I know I've spent a few minutes talking about this, but I really think this is like a 30-second process. Just sit, take a couple breaths, think, all right, how's my body? All right, okay. How's my energy? Where's my head? And then, okay, I got 20 minutes or I got 30 minutes or I got all the time in the world. What am I going to do?
And in fact, I think kind of the more you do it, the quicker that process becomes, and you just know. And if you are using the site, you kind of know, oh, I need that. I need one of Adam's classes, or I need one of whoever's classes today, or I know that because you get to know the class, and they feel different every time as well, don't they? They each, even though the class is the same, it isn't the same when you repeat it, because you're never the same. So, but in terms of, say, I'm sure we have people watching this who are trying to establish a home practice for the first time, and just in terms of giving them advice, because we always hear, don't we, that to really establish a habit, we should do it consistently at the same time every day. Is that true of a home practice, or should it be? It should be consistent, I think, but should it be at the same time every day? I personally don't practice at the same time every day. I know that there will be days that if I don't do it first thing, I'll lose the opportunity. But otherwise, I quite like to do it in the afternoon or the evening, and it depends on the day. But what do you think, Adam?
I mean, it really depends on your personality and what you need to help you establish positive habits. So I know that some people will thrive on routine, and just that is what is going to make it happen. Every morning at 7 a.m. I get up and I do this, or every afternoon at 2 before I do the school run, or whatever it is. You do this, and that might be the thing that helps you maintain it. And like, if that's your personality, I think you know it. But that isn't the only way. And I think for like me, I am not that person. especially like the life of a yoga teacher. Like it's not like I'm getting up for work at the same time every day, and like, you know, it's like all ever cuckoo. So what helps me is saying the only thing that matters is that I'm taking care of myself daily, and I'm doing practices daily to maintain what I need to feel good. And what those practices are can shift daily, because I shift daily. But the important thing is I'm doing stuff every day. And then I can take a macro look at it and sort of say, I know I need to do stronger physical stuff, maybe 2 or 3, 4 times a week. So for me, and so I need to know, like, all right, I just got to make sure weekly I'm doing that. I'm ticking those boxes, but it can happen sort of whenever. And I think if you sort of take that like expectation, it has to be a certain routine off yourself, for if that's your personality, then again, you will thrive. I think all this like yoga has to be this way at this time for this amount of, you know, this duration can be, it might be really comforting to you if that's your personality. It also might be really limiting to you if you need more flexibility in your life. And also, like, if you're a parent, if you're a carer, if you're working from home, like, it's going to be hard. It's going to be, especially if you have young children. So, you know, you gotta sort of find the thing that works for you.
Yeah. And so basically you're saying that be consistent, but there is no, even, it's not just that a practice doesn't look the same for everyone. It's also that it doesn't look the same for you every day. It could be that some days you do 10 minutes of meditation, and other days you might do 90 minutes of vinyasa, or so it can be different depending on your needs.
Yes.
So there is no, this is what a home practice looks like.
There's no should. I think you just got to determine what is the home practice you need, and then do that thing. And then as you do more of it, you learn more. And, you know, I sort of think that there are, like, for me, there are like minimum daily requirements for me to like just be functional and sort of feel like I got it together. So I know I have to meditate every day, and I tend to do it in the morning. Okay. And I have to do like some restorative prior to bed, so I sleep. But the rest is, you know, it's sort of fungible. And even like the duration of time I meditate or do restorative is sort of fungible. I think that just helps me, it keeps it alive for me.
Yeah. And I think similarly, I meditate daily. I do that first thing, because otherwise I won't. But asana practice varies depending on the day, and sometimes it might be tiny, sometimes, you know, it might be a little stretch in the kitchen, but sometimes it's hours. So that varies. But I know that for me, if I don't meditate first thing, it's not going to happen.
I think you have to sort of take a step back and think, with the asana, why am I doing this? If I'm training to be an elite asana athlete, then yes, you should be doing 90 minutes to 2 hours every day. It should be really regimented. It should be nonstop. And go for it. If that's your thing, if you want to just conquer every pose, then by all means, spend that time. And if you ain't spending that time, you're not going to be an elite yoga athlete. But that is probably not the expectation that most of us have for the practice. Sometimes we can get confused about it. And think that like becoming the elite asana athlete is going to be the thing that helps us like feel enlightened. I don't tend to think that way anymore. I just like to use these poses and these movements to feel good in my body, obviously, but to also manage my nervous system and sort of help me facilitate a friendly relationship with my body. And that just sort of teaches me how to be Adam in the world.
And it's nice, isn't it, sometimes to work towards something and sometimes to be completely free form and laid back. And it depends on what else is happening in your life as well. I find that, I think that's the other thing, is that I don't personally, for me, I don't really think that your yoga practice should be completely separate from your life, because it can't be, really, can it? Because it is a part of your life. So how you feel when you're not doing yoga is probably how you feel when you are doing yoga as well. But it can help you manage the non-yoga or off the mat time as well. And in terms of some of the classes that maybe people have been looking at, we've had loads of discussion in the movers group recently. I've noticed people are really supporting each other and recommending classes and asking for guidance and so on. But you mentioned something really interesting earlier, which is when you said that little bit of before you practice, sit down, before you even pick a class, sit down and spend a bit of time and check in with yourself. But also the teacher will guide you through the practice. And it's quite nice having someone else do the thinking about the poses, maybe. But you don't have to, you decide the intensity. The teacher's not sort of driving that for you. So in terms of people having a home practice that does involve watching classes online, do you want to talk a little bit about picking those classes, but also how you make it work for you as your home practice? And is it okay to stop and watch again? Is it okay to, if you start something and you don't like it, abandon it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think you could interact with our classes or whatever, whatever you're doing, in a very passive recipient way. So Adam is on my computer screen or my iPad, and I'm just going to do everything he says and then expect an outcome. And that actually might take care of you for a while. But I think for it to actually be a self-practice, meaning it is meeting your needs for wellness, a self-practice for you, rather than you just replicating Adam's practice or Raki's practice or Mimi's practice or Vidya's practice or whoever you watch. For it to be your practice, you have to be more of an active participant. And by that, I mean, you've taken the time, number one, to choose the class for a reason. It could be, I just like that class. It helps me feel good. It's part of my routine. Great. But you've actively chosen it. And it may also be you've chosen the shoulder or the hip class because that's what you're working with today. Or, it's there's an active choice. But then there's everything else that happens during the class. So you already mentioned the intensity. So every time from, whatever the pose is, you can choose to do that pose soft. You can choose to do that pose hard. You can put everything into it, or you can just step back. And then, of course, everything in between. And just because you're a person who can do the pose, dripping sweat to max range, doesn't mean you have to if you need a mellow day. And, so you just got to figure out what intensity do I need? And not only just the tone of it, every standing pose, you can play around with the length of it. So a warrior 2, the length of it can be short, it can be long. The same thing for any lunge. And I'm sure in classes that flow, all of them, you're constantly being presented with choices of to do the flow bits or to rest or to hold something. And that isn't just about, do I have the energy left to do it? It's about, do I need that thing today in this moment to help me feel good and breathe? So there are so many opportunities just to regulate the physicality of the practice. Teacher says down dog, and it gives a few alignment cues, but the tone, the depth, the power of it, that's all on you. All right, so there's that. And then, of course, there's how you breathe in the practice. So no matter what the teacher's saying, I think if you really need to ground yourself and calm an anxious mind down, you can just make sure your breathing is much more focused on really rich exhalations, deep exhalations, full exhalations. And like, conversely, if you know you need to like wake yourself up, you'll focus a little bit more on the power of the inhale and the fullness of the inhale. And that can happen no matter what the teacher's doing. You can be doing that. You just sort of stay in their rhythm, but you breathe in a way that is giving you something you need. But then there's also the intention of it. I always think about this class I had with an American teacher named Sean Korn, who's just this like force of nature. But she taught us sun salutes, and she had us just do the same sun salute that looks like every other sun salute. But each time she would say like give it a different intention. So, all right, you're going to do this sun salute to express love. Or you're going to do this sun salute to express gratitude. Or you're going to do this sun salute to find a little comfort within, whatever it is. And you might be surprised if you sort of say, all right, I'm going to do this thing to do X for myself. It'll take on a different quality. So you could do the same class on movement for modern life that you love doing and you've done a gazillion times. But if you come into it and say, all right, I usually don't even really think about it. I just sort of go with it and I feel good at the end. But today I'm going to do all the stuff I love to do in this class. But I'm going to do this class as an act of self-compassion for myself, as a way of like nurturing some sort of deep hurt within me. And you would know what that is. And I'm going to use this class to sort of play with that. And you'll have a different class. And I think you'll have a more powerful class. And you don't have to do that every time. Like at 7 a.m., you're probably not thinking about that. But sometimes you might be. And that's just a way to make something that is a recorded thing online a little bit more personal and meaningful. You just like actively participate in it. But then I think we talk about like the really like nuts and bolts stuff, right? Like injuries and like how you do that, because I get excited by like the higher level stuff. But let's get like really practical. So I mean, have you seen concerns, Raki, about like injuries and modifying?
I think people are generally, when doing a home practice, either people want to address specific injuries or they're worried about injuring themselves. And so I think people are sort of thinking, if I do this, how do I know I am doing it right? So I've picked this class and it sounds really amazing, but it has a crow or a handstand and whatever. And what if I fall on my head? And maybe I won't do that because I might, end up with a head injury, and I don't want that. Or, maybe pull my hamstring. Or so really, what should people do when practicing on their own, where there isn't a teacher present to support them if they are worried, either if they are injured, or B, if something scares them?
So I think
how do they keep safe, really?
Yeah. I think number one, don't be afraid of your own body and of moving, unless like you have been given clear medical advice not to do a thing. All right. So I think that number one, like, let's not just like live in fear. And actually a lot, I don't want to overstate this, but like sometimes the fear and the bracing and the caution can actually create more of the problem in the long term. Like the actual thing you did to your back may be long gone, but the living in fear keeps you sort of living in discomfort and pain and sort of avoiding. All right. But there's nuance to that I know you all get. Okay. So number one, don't be afraid of moving. But then don't do anything cuckoo. If you don't understand how to do it, don't do it. It's like just you're an adult. But yoga is a physical discipline, like any physical discipline or sport or whatever. there is risk of you pulling something occasionally. The way to avoid that is not live or not move, but that doesn't mean you have to be reckless. So I think the way we're not reckless is we move at a reasonable pace. We don't rush. If something confuses us, we don't do it. Maybe we rewind and watch. Maybe we save it for later. And we avoid, I would say, like, watch out for warning signs, which might be strong, isolated sensations. Like, it's quite possible that yoga will feel uncomfortable, like the yoga postures will feel uncomfortable and challenging. But if you can still breathe and it's just sort of like a general overall feeling of that's uncomfortable, I wouldn't worry about it. If you're struggling breathing and you're feeling like one big pull in one region, I would stop. Even if the teacher is still instructing that pose, I would stop and change tack. So I think avoiding strong, isolated sensations, avoiding rushing, avoiding going to maximum range of motion, and also being realistic to yourself that maybe you shouldn't try to put your leg behind your head if you're 55 and never did gymnastics and you've been practicing for a month
and haven't warmed up.
Yeah, you just let some of that go, and always work incrementally. If it doesn't feel right, ask yourself, what's the voice saying I should go further? And then sort of say, okay, maybe I take a step back. But it's like impossible to avoid all entry. It's gonna happen, perhaps.
And it's weird sometimes. I mean, you get injured just living, and I've had this. I used to have a recurring shoulder injury, and I was thinking, what am I doing in yoga? And I really looked at it, and I was so careful. And in the end, I figured out it was when I was putting on my backpack. I used to twist my shoulder in a certain way, and that's what it was. So I wasn't injured by yoga. I was injured by putting on a backpack. So it happens, but it's okay because I'm still alive. My shoulder doesn't hurt anymore. I'm fine. That's life. I was kind of leading on from that. I have two questions. One is alignment cues or alignment. Some people get really obsessive about where your heel is in relation to the arch of your foot in the warriors, and where your hip should be, and so on. Some people are very precise about that. I'm one of those that isn't. So I don't.
We're gonna have some controversy here, and I'm all for it.
I was going to say I'm about to set the yoga police on you, Adam. And then the other question that I really wanted to talk about is levels, because I do see people saying I'm a beginner or I'm an intermediate, and I sort of think I used to think I was a beginner for probably till I did the teacher training, and I thought probably not a beginner. But I'd sometimes not go to a class that wasn't a beginner's class, and then I went to them and I thought, I can do this stuff. It's fine. And in fact, sometimes I find beginners' classes more challenging. So my two questions are alignment and what's the right level.
All right. So let's don't let me forget the level stuff, but let's say alignment. I don't want to get too carried away with this, but there is no absolute alignment that suits every person's body. Okay, there is yoga alignment cues. Heel goes here, whatever, that rotates this way, that are taught in different traditions as, depending on the tradition, like that is the objective truth, or that's a subjective thing that we play around with. So you have to sort of see it as like that might just be the tradition that is teaching me that way. Okay. and not as that is the absolute truth about human bodies. And if you just want to learn the tradition and do it that way, see how it feels. I think if you want to sort of see the reality of human bodies, you will have to confront the reality that there is no one way to put your hips in Warrior Two or triangle pose. But to me, that loosens it up a little bit. There are ways of putting your hips and your feet that will work for most bodies. And then there are people on either side of the spectrum who will need their foot turned a different way. So how, especially if you're a newer student and this is like, oh my God, what do I do? Everything's confusing. Nothing's true. Nothing's certain. What is this postmodern world we're living in? You just take what the teachers told you. You try it. If it feels good and it's meeting your intentions and the intentions the teacher is setting out, great. If it's not working, it's uncomfortable, you're unsteady, you're unstable, move those feet, move those hands until you find, especially like I can just do the pose, I'm avoiding isolated pain, and I can breathe. And then the more yoga classes you take with different teachers, you will find different approaches and different ways of working with little bits of alignment here and there. And you will eventually find a way of working most of the time with poses and where to put your feet and where to put your hands, and it'll start to make sense.
And can I just add to that? I think sometimes there are things that aren't always cued. So it might be something like triangle that, you know, you think your arm has to be up, but it doesn't, does it? You can, if that is really uncomfortable, you can change it. You can put it on your hip or behind your head, and that might open you up in a different way that's quite helpful. You might just find that that's more helpful for your body. And then the other thing is also where you look and your neck. If your neck is sore, looking up. So we seem to have gone into a triangle pose.
I know we could be talking about this for hours. I think the point is, like, you're in your own living room or lounge or wherever you're doing it. Just like, don't do things that hurt.
Yeah.
Perhaps do things that are uncomfortable in the moment, but don't rigidly stick to things that don't hurt or make sense because you think that's what it has to be for yoga. It does not.
And it's fine. And also use the pause if something is being cued too fast, and rewatch, and you will learn. So that's a really good way. So levels then.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about the pause.
Yeah.
Because my mother does my classes, but often because she needs a lot of visual cues. Okay, so sometimes she'll watch the entire class first and then do it. So that does not have to be you, but there's no like you don't just put on the stream and just do it. If you're a person who needs to stop and pause and look and rewind, or you want to take a little break and have your cup of tea, do that. You're in your own. It's yours. There's no rules.
And there might be something you're really enjoying, or you're really trying to get up into handstand, and you think one more try and I'll be there. You pause it, do it, play with it. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
It's not like I'm waiting for you. I'm at home eating my lunch. I recorded this months ago. You do what you need.
Yeah, everyone. If you press the pause, Adam has to hold his breath and
twiddling my thumbs, waiting for you. All right, so levels. Okay. Levels. So level 3 might be you're working deeper into your sense of being and on this path of awakening and mindfulness. All right, it might be that thing. Going deeper into like all types of yoga. Level 3 might also be I'm doing harder poses that are more physically demanding. And it may also be I'm doing poses that require extreme range of motion that normal human beings do not have. So sometimes the levels, I think most of the time the levels are meaningless until you sort of figure out what that means for a specific teacher. I know Kat and the team do their best to sort of figure out the levels. Like most of my classes are leveled pretty like all levels not too hard, but I think because I want them to be accessible if you want to do them gently. And I also want them to give you space if you want to do them hard with a lot of intensity. So that's the way I set them up, so they can sort of hold space for both of those. But other teachers might use the levels to say, like, signal, this level 3 has poses that will not be accessible to most human bodies. And this level 1 really means I am explaining everything in a lot of detail. So it's sort of hard to pin down. I mean, what do you think, Raki?
I mean, I think it is really subjective. So if there are some poses that you find really challenging, even if they're a really basic pose, because sometimes I'm really surprised at what people describe as basic or advanced, but that's just because my body can do things, and but I also used to be able to do things that I can't now, or vice versa. So I think levels are a useful guide, maybe, but I don't think that they carry any intrinsic truth. I mean, I would say that just because something is described as all levels, just following up on what you were saying there, Adam, it doesn't necessarily mean it's kind of going to be easy, or if something is shown as as a higher intensity. So, and I think with some of your classes that are, for example, I think once you get to know teachers, you probably understand some of those levels a little bit more. But I know, for example, if I do one of your classes, there will be a level of intensity, but it's not generally going to require me to do anything completely crazy either. So it might just be that my thighs get challenged in a high lunge for a while, which is accessible. But I might also be going, oh my God, Adam, what are you doing? But so I think it's just a guide. So I think don't pigeonhole yourself is really what I would say. Don't do that anyway. It's not very nice, is it, to pigeonhole yourself?
I would say, like, the practical takeaway is, most likely, if the class is leveled high, you should make sure, like a 2 or a 3, you should make sure you have, a couple years experience before you try those things, because you may or may not be able to do the stuff in it. But if you have a couple years experience, you sort of know where your limits are in your body and how to push into it. So you, like, back to that sort of injury thing. Like, if you don't have much experience and just jump into a high level class, even if you're young and fit and flexible, you don't really know how to use that flexibility in a yoga context. All right. And then, so that's like, approach those higher levels with, like, be reasonable. Like, you wouldn't go on like the triple diamond slope your first time out on your skis. And most likely classes leveled beginners or level 1, they may not actually be like super easy, but they'll be accessible, and they will probably be slow enough that you can figure out what's going on. And then the rest in the middle is just going to be a muddle in the middle, and you got to sort of determine what the teacher is like. And then, as you said, do not pigeonhole yourself in a level. I used to teach this beginner's yoga class at a gym in West London, and I had inherited it from someone else. And I know there were people who had been going to that beginner's class for 15 years because they liked it. And that's great to have comfort, but push yourself every so often, so you sort of know when you're in your comfort zone for a good reason, and when it's sort of like avoiding exploring deeper.
And if it feels challenging, you've challenged yourself, it's too much for you, you don't have to do
Bring
the
that
pose.
sucker off.
You can
And I just power down.
Yeah, you can do a child's pose. You can do a wide-legged forward fold, make it work for you.
Yeah.
Time's almost up, but I really wanted to talk to you about Shavasana, Adam, because I have this really sneaking suspicion that people actually, don't do it.
So here's the thing. All right, so recording a Shavasana is a slightly odd thing, although I've made our filming team do it for me, and also practicing a Shavasana that's on a video screen might be an odd thing, but it's worth it. Okay, so this is my just plea: if it's taught in the class and given an allocated time in the class, try to do it. If you've already committed 15 or 20 minutes of your day, or 30 minutes or 45, like when you started that class, you knew how long it was and that you had that time. So if it's part of the class, please do the Shavasana. It really is worth it. If you don't like lying down, still spend the time, sit, meditate, lie on your side, sit in your chair, put your legs up the wall, but just have those moments of quiet so you can transition out of the class. All right, so that's if the Shavasana is there. Often when we record these things, again, it sort of feels odd to just like record people lying there. So sometimes we do shorter Shavasanas than you might want. Feel free to stay longer. Just, let the video in, stay longer. Here's the other thing. You've done, like one of like Racky's 15, 20-minute new things. I love all these little short nugget classes you're doing. And then you think, all right, I got that little physical burst in the afternoon whenever I did it. You go and do some stuff. You can just lie down and do a Shavasana or a restorative pose without anything else before it. So do that too. I think I've recorded a class that's just Shavasana. So do that. My mom does a Shavasana. I'm gonna take the Linda Hocke approach. Just do Shavasana. You don't have to do, you can get dessert without the meal. There's also the Linda Hocke way.
I love your mom. But really, I think it isn't a waste of time as well as a Shavasana, because people think, oh, well, I've done the stuff that's good for me, and I don't need to do the lying down. But you probably need to do the lying down, don't you? Really?
The rest is not passive. Okay? Like, you may think, I'm lying down, nothing's happening. A whole heck of a lot is happening. And if you're a person whose brain is going crazy when you lie down, further testament that a lot is happening and might need to happen. You might need the time for things to be processed. And I always think like Shavasana is giving me a safe, comfortable container for my nervous system to calm down and for my mind and my heart to do some like rest and healing. And like, if you're a person whose brain spins, I'd much prefer it to spin while I'm being comforted by a blanket and letting everything calm down than, just every other moment of my day. So please do your Shavasanas. Try it. It's hard, but it's worth it.
And then what about after Shavasana?
Okay. After Shavasana, you know what? What I really think is important is to check in again and say, all right, before this class, I thought my shoulders were hurting. I was anxious. I wanted to spend 30 minutes to deal with both of those things. I chose this class. I chose Adam's anxious shoulders class. It doesn't exist, but I chose Adam's 30-minute anxious shoulders class. You know what? That did not help me. Adam's class, that was the wrong choice. So next time I have anxious shoulders, I'm not going to do that class. Or that class really did it. So I'll remember when I feel like this again, I'll do it. And that doesn't mean like my anxious shoulders class was terrible. It was just the wrong class for you based on how you were feeling. So you sort of start matching the need with how you dealt with it and if it worked. And you sort of repeat that process. And I think that's how you make it a self-practice that works for you, that serves your needs.
And I should just say, I think a lot of people posting comments are people that some of the names are ones I recognize. So I think,
everybody.
I think some of you will be familiar with this, but in case you didn't know, you can make a class a favorite, and you can also add a class to a move list. So a move list is a bit like a playlist. So you can put all your favorite classes into a move list, or I'd like to think that people were out there making their own move lists for a week, or their Christmas move list or whatever, of the classes that you think are going to really support you. And then in terms of or for the week ahead or whatever, and so in terms of what classes I'm going to do, you've already got a list of tried and tested classes to draw on. And you don't, obviously they're not the only classes you will do, because you'll try some other ones, but it's a really nice way to have something, or if you're working on something, to build it up. So you can favorite them, and you can also schedule them. So if you are prone to the I'm a bit lazy, when the little reminder comes up or it's scheduled, you can get on your mat. So it's these are just all ways to support your practice. But what if people had all the intentions to do their classes, Adam, and they skip a day? Is that all right? Will the yoga police get them?
I think this will be a good end thing. Here's the bit of truth. You're going to miss a day. You're going to miss a week. There might be a whole month. There might be a whole year you miss. You can come back. And the only person making you feel guilty is probably that gym teacher that we want to politely say goodbye to in your head, speaking nasty. So that voice of guilt that says, like, when you miss a week, you're a failure. Like, question who that is and come back to the voice of friendship and care that comes from deep within. And then that will inspire the enthusiasm of your practice. And just remember that always yogis and meditators and people who've worked for these types of teachings have factored in the ups and downs of like motivation for practice. So you're not the only one. You are not the only one who's going to struggle with keeping it up. It's hard, especially with all we got going on now, and if you're a parent. I know Leah was talked about it in the movers group, like being a new parent. It's like that's gonna make everything a little bit more difficult to take care of yourself when you're taking care of a little one. I know it's a big deal for many of our movers. So you just got to expect that there are going to be challenges. There are going to be times when you cannot practice, and that's okay. If it's a day you do not have any time to move your body, could you sit for 5 breaths? Could you sit for 1 breath and just say, you know what, I can't do anything today, but I'm still here for myself. And that might be enough. And if you keep that up and keep that attitude, the practice, when you have the time and the space, will emerge, I think, as an outcome from that.
Great. Well, thank you, Adam. It's always so much fun talking to you. I
love it. I wish we could see each other for
real. I know.
We don't live that far away from each other, so I'll wave out my window.
Yeah, I know. It's frustrating, isn't it? But at least we can practice together.
Yeah.
So that's really great. But it's been really lovely. Thank you all. Have fun with your home practice. I think I was going to say good luck, and I thought you don't need luck. Just need to enjoy it. And really, at the end of the day, I think enjoying it and challenging yourself and just having fun with it and forgiving yourself is what it's about.
Definitely.
So great. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Raki. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.